Welcome to the Shea and Irving Show, special guest time. Got Will Cain of Fox and Friends Weekend at the Will Cain Show. He was nice enough to come on and talk a little shit. We're going to get into football, maybe some politics, media in general. Will, thanks for coming on, brother.
What's up, Shea? Happy to be here.
Good. Glad to hear it. So you're in Dallas now, and you're from Dallas, right?
I'm from a small town about an hour north of Dallas. For most of my life, I would never have answered that question in the affirmative that I am from Dallas. I prided myself on not being from Dallas, from being from a small town. I'm from Sherman, Texas. The suburbs, despite Sherman being north of Dallas, are growing towards Sherman, but they haven't yet reached it. So you still had to go through countryside when I was growing up, and you still do have to go through some countryside before you get to Sherman. But now I'm fancy. Yes, I live in Dallas.
Dallas fancy. Yeah. Yeah, that's a shame. So you sold your soul, you moved to Dallas, you got kids, you do the whole thing, everybody loves it. You first started, just a little background for our fans here. You got into media out of college, right? You bought and sold some media companies, you did some shit behind the scenes. Talk to the people. What'd you do?
Yeah, it's not a linear story, but I'll try to give you the abridged version. So I went to law school after college. I went to college in California, came back, went to the University of Texas Law School. I loved it, Shea. I loved Austin. I love Texas. After law school, I didn't really want to go be a lawyer. To me, the whole idea was a little bit like, I mean, I like it. I like argumentation. I like persuasion. My dad was a small town lawyer, but it felt like, okay, I could do this. It felt for me like hitting a double, and I wanted to swing for the fences. I wanted to see how far I could hit the ball. So for me at the time, I kind of wanted to be a writer. So, I grew up, I idolized Lonesome Dove, watched it, loved Larry McMurtry. And, in Lonesome Dove, Gus and Call take the cattle herd and they drive it up to Montana. Yeah. And Montana had achieved this level of romanticism in my mind that I was like, I got to do it. I got to go to Montana. So I went to Montana, and the idea was while I was up there, I ended up working a ranch. I was going to write the Great American Novel, and I did. Nice. I did. It was a romantic year in that I had a small cabin on a river. I packed hunters back into the mountains during hunting season. We took them into the mountains to do sapphire mining during the summer, and I'd spend all my other time, pounding away on a laptop at the Great American Novel. But I was also reading a ton, just reading, fiction and nonfiction alike. And I love media, so I started reading about newspapers. I read the biography of Warren Buffett. I read the biography of this guy who started USA Today. And I just always loved media, and I wanted to be behind the scenes, like you said, and sort of be in the entrepreneurial side of media. But even then, first of all, I didn't come from the kind of money where you're like, I'm going to buy a radio station or I'm going to buy a television station. But I had started to learn about newspapers, and it was achievable to think I could own small town newspapers. So I came back to Texas. My dad died while I was up there in Montana. It changed my life, made me grow up, made me become a man. And I was like, well, I'm going to learn this newspaper business. So I moved to the Hill Country. I lived in I lived in a town called Kingsland. I worked in Llano and Johnson City.
Oh, yeah.
And I just kind of learned small town newspapers. And then I came back up to Dallas, and I started buying them in the growth path north of Dallas, little towns, Van Alstyne, Anna, Melissa, Prosper. And I sold them. And that's what I did. And then in the interim, I decided, well, I'm going to keep doing this media thing, and I'm going to pick a couple niches where I think their growth, like Dallas is growing north, so that's why I focused in that area. The Hispanic market's growing, so I'm like, well, I'm going to create something for that community, that market. My wife, and I don't mean to ramble, Shea, but my wife's from Lubbock. When I was growing up, and again, Sherman's up on the Red River, close to it, right? So the truth is, the only Latinos we had in Sherman then were from El Salvador, like refugees from the El Salvadorian Civil War. Now, Sherman's probably 20, 25%, Mexican.
Sure.
But so the point is, I didn't know a lot about Latino stuff growing up. But my wife's from Lubbock, and she told me about quinceañeras. And I was
Oh
getting
yeah.
married about this time. And my wife would bring home these magazines that were like wedding planning magazines, and they were like this thick. They were like 2 inches thick, and they were like 80% ads. And I'm like, this is a good business. And I
Yeah.
took that and I applied it to the quinceañeras, and I started a magazine and website, an event company for quinceañera planning. Now
Oh
I could
my
walk you
God.
through that, but the long and short of it is, I raised money. The long and short of it is, after 3 years, it failed. So here's the finish line of this story, Shea. So I had done two entrepreneurial things. One succeeded and one failed.
Yeah.
And I'd made money and I'd lost money. And, I said to myself, I'm going to make money. I know how to figure this out, but I don't need to do it for money, because if you don't
Mm.
make money, then there's no cushion when you say to yourself, how did I spend my time? And for me, quinceañeras and 15-year-old Latinas aren't my passion. So I've
Thank
made this joke a
God.
ton. If they were, they were, call the FBI. So I am somewhat passionate about politics. I'm very passionate about sports. I'm very passionate about ideas and philosophies and these
Mm.
types of things. And in 2008, I'm looking at what I think is a real big moment in American history. Obama comes in. Obama represented a philosophical shift to me in America on what was our relationship with government. Who are we as a country? I'm like, I'm diving in on this now. This is how I'm going to be
Mhm.
entrepreneurial. I'm passionate about it. And I want to be in TV, and I want to be, or media at large, in front of the microphone. And I want to be a part of this conversation.
Got it. What role, I mean, local newspapers, this is an interesting little tidbit because of your history. Do you think there's any saving them, or is there any coming back from what they were? And if so, how the hell do you do it?
Man, I think about that a lot. I'm going to tell you why. It's going to be circuitous, but I did this week on the Will Cain Show, which you can get at Spotify or Apple or
Hell yeah.
YouTube. Um, Man, I love regionalism, Shay. Like, I love it. I love your accent, my accent, the
Mhm.
Boston accent. I love people listening to different music. Like, I like red dirt country. Yeah, it does. It
Amen.
speaks to me, all this stuff we have down here in Texas. But I also like that it's ours.
Mhm.
And I also like, you and I love the Longhorns. I was thinking about this. Well, part of the reason we love college football and it has such a passionate fan base is because it's ours, right? It's not
Totally.
owned by Jerry Jones. It's not
Right.
owned by some big corporation. It's ours. And we're losing that, Shay. We're losing that in college football as we move to
Yeah.
super leagues and NIL and so forth. Point is, I like regionalism. And one of the last, holdouts on regionalism was community newspapers. And we are
Mhm.
losing them. And the idea of the community newspaper was, here's what you get in the Van Alstyne Leader. You get high school football talk.
Right.
You get city council. You get school board.
Right.
You get the stuff that matters at your life. Now we're losing it. It's true, Shay. Those do better than big city dailies, but we're losing it because as in America, we are all gravitating towards the monoculture. We listen to the
Mhm.
same crap music. We watch the
Amen.
same TV shows. We watch the same sports, and we're all becoming a blah, the same. And I don't like that. So my point is, I do think, now we're all scrolling, and the scroll is individualized and it's tailored to your interests, but there is still an interest in community and my people and the people I'm a part of, my tribe, the people that help me raise my kids. And whether or not that's your high school football team or a local sports thing or local newspaper, I actually think there's another entrepreneurial turn in doing something that unifies communities. I don't know what it
Mhm.
is. It may not be the old school black and white newspaper, right? And it may not be the high school football team. When I was growing up, Shay, your team and my team played each other, right? Like
Yeah.
uh, I don't know that we're in the same district, but I went to the game
Oh
when I
yeah.
was in fifth grade,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't have an older brother in high school. Everybody went to the Friday night game.
Yeah.
It's just what we did.
Yeah.
And that's really healthy for a community. And I think there's entrepreneurial stuff to be done still around community.
I think that ties in exactly. I totally agree with you about the monoculture and the regionalism and it being important. I think that ties in directly to my theory of like a technological backlash that the younger kids are going to have. Like I've got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. We do our best to keep them away from screens and all that shit. But there's a lot of parents my age, your age, that are like, saying, fuck this. Like, we're not participating in this insanity of TikTok and Instagram and all this other stuff. Because in my town, people still go to the Friday night football games and the kids go hang out with each other. They all know each other. And I live in a small town, but like, it's pretty tight knit. And I think the kids, my kids, maybe a couple years older than them, are just going to reject this notion of always being plugged in and never stopping working and all this other shit. I think they're going to kick back and try and enjoy life a little more traditionally.
I hope you're right, but I don't know that you're right. I don't know that this tide can be dammed up. I really don't. Now, over COVID in the last 4 years or so, we've seen some backlash, reversion. Hunting and fishing has gotten way more popular. You know, I don't know the numbers on it, but I know it anecdotally, but I also think it's true business-wise. Like, you've seen some of these businesses, Steve Rinella, Meat Eater, so forth, take off. And so I do think there's a desire to sort of be connected to the real world. Yeah. What I think is it's probably a tough tide to dam. And what I hope is the next evolution is some understanding of what's healthy. Like, in a lot of ways, I'm looking at you, man. You probably lift. You probably eat right. And that you're making choices. I am. And by the way, this is new for me. You know, I just started in July, Shea. Like, I eat like 170 grams of protein and try to be under 2,200 calories. And I've been but Shea, I've been an idiot most of my life. Like, I'm like, eating healthy means not having dessert and cutting back on fried chicken. But now I understand like what it means to be healthy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And by the way, I've seen, and I'm lifting, I've seen results in like whatever it's been 3 months. My point is, we're making choices. At some point, we'll make those same choices when it comes to, I don't like mental health talk, but like, you have to think your brain is like a muscle. So what are you feeding it? And if you're feeding it crap all day, you're going to have a lazy, fat brain. Absolutely. And so what I think will happen, I hope, instead of damming up the tide, we'll be able to gear the tide towards some healthy choices on how you engage with this phone and this info.
I think it'll be broken down by income distribution too. I think the more money you have, the more you value time, right? And I think time is the ultimate luxury. And people are going to say, you know what? I'm not wasting my time scrolling and doing this other shit. I'm going to the gym, or I'm going fishing, or I'm going to go walk the river, or I'm going to get back into nature. I think grinding it out is just, I don't know. I think there's going to be a backlash, but I agree. I don't think it'll be a full 180. But now that we dug into a little bit about your background, Texas OU is this weekend. The Red River Shootout, or as the communists say, the rivalry. Have you ever been to the Cotton Bowl for one of these games?
Yes. Yeah. Is that what it is, by the way? I can't keep up because it's moved the name so many times. Is it the Red River rivalry? I really did quit. They changed it. I don't know. Yeah, I guess Red River rivalry. So I went when I was a kid. We would drive down to Dallas and go to the Cotton Bowl. The last time I was there, so you got my story, and for anybody that is listening and doesn't know the rest of the story, that gets a little, to me, it's the less interesting part when it becomes public, but, you know, real quick, I end up at CNN, and I do, you know, conservative political commentator there, and The Blaze for like 5 years. I'm at Fox now, been there for 4 years, but the interim from 15 to 20, I was at ESPN. And I had the Will Cain show on ESPN. I did First Take. And I got to do a lot of things in terms of go-to stuff, right? And so I did, Ryan Russillo had a radio show, but Ryan and I are buddies, and he did his radio show from Dallas. I was still living in New York at this time. He did it for Texas OU, and then we got tickets. And I got to do sidelines, man. And I don't bring that up to like, look at me, fancy me. Like, if you had me rank the things that I've done because of the fortune of my job, it's way, way, way up there. Yeah. I stood on the sidelines. I believe it was Ellinger and Mayfield. Did they have a cross? They did, right? It wasn't just Ellinger Murray. We did, and I think it was Ellinger might have been a freshman. It was real, and Mayfield might have been like a senior, if I'm remembering correctly.
Close to that.
But I stood on the sidelines next to Jordan. I stood next to Jordan Spieth. Awesome experience. And you get to walk back and forth. You can walk the whole sidelines behind the bench.
God.
and talk to Jordan, real quiet guy. Rachel Lindsay, who is she was on The Bachelor or Bachelorette, one of those,
Okay.
And here's my takeaway, man. And I've done sidelines of NFL when I was a kid. I did that as well. This game sticks out in my head. The power of the hitting is just stunning. Like, it happened in front of me, and this is college football, but I feel like I remember a Baker Mayfield scramble toward my sideline and him getting popped right before he goes out of bounds. And just the sound in the hit, it is even, I don't even know if the first or second row you feel it like you do when you're standing right there. But it was awesome to be on the sidelines of Texas OU.
It is. I've never been that close, that's for sure, but it is a D-Gen weekend. Like, in Dallas, that whole town just goes crazy. Every hotel lobby, every bar, every freaking Chili's restaurant is just jam-packed, and people are getting it in. I love it. Even if you don't go to the game,
home.
It's crazy.
You can drive through neighborhoods. It's not just like the commercial establishment.
Yeah.
It's like people with parties in their front yard. I love Texas OU weekend. I hate that I work
parties.
I hate that I work in New York on Fox and Friends weekend because I can't be here for it now. But I love Texas OU.
So that was my next question. So you got a family and whatnot in Dallas. You just get on a plane every Friday or what?
Yeah, I get a plane every week. Yeah, Friday to Sunday, Thursday to Sunday, Friday to Monday. It ends up one of those equations. But yeah, I mean, here, as much as I've got friends at the Texas program. I could go to more games, and I could do that part of my life. I'll tell you what I really miss is hunting. I haven't hunted in years, and I love duck hunting. I was just thinking this morning I want to join. I don't have a ranch, so I was thinking about joining this duck club up in southern Oklahoma. But the thing I miss the most, and I miss socializing, like having drinks with friends and going out at night. But the thing I miss the most, and I get a little bit, is seeing my sons play soccer and football.
Yeah.
And my sons both play for FC Dallas, and I miss a lot of those games. And my oldest son, is the kicker and punter on his high school football team. And so I've been to 2, I'll be at 3 before the season is over. But everyone I miss, I feel in my heart. And by the way, now they stream everything. Every soccer game I get to watch, every football game I get to watch, but I don't get to be there, and it hurts my heart.
Yeah, I got my eldest is obsessed with soccer. She plays 6 days a week, and I'm at if I wasn't, she'd be. It's so weird because my parents didn't go to shit of mine growing up. Even football games, they were like, whatever.
I know.
It wasn't that big of a deal. But now it's like every parent all the time. It's like everybody's got to have a job that lets you just do whatever the fuck you want, I guess.
Hey, real quick, same way growing up. My parents didn't go. They didn't go. They went to some, but it wasn't a deal if you missed. No. Again, I'm gone a lot. So what I do is, honestly, I go to practices. Like your daughter plays 6 days a week. I literally could be at a soccer practice every night, and I am at most of them. The only reason I'm not at all of them is because I got 2 boys that are doing it. But I love watching, and I feel guilty when I don't. But why? It's not like our parents did that.
No, and their sure shit didn't. My parents didn't play soccer growing up or any of that crap. None of this 24-hour sports thing. I mean, that's been an evolution too, which is just a racket. You're playing club soccer. It's just the money is bananas, and it shouldn't be. It should be one of the cheapest sports to fucking play. You get a soccer ball on a field. Leave me alone. Fuck out of here.
And you don't need to travel. You don't need to go to Phoenix and Las Vegas. There's plenty of good teams in Dallas. You don't need to. But to your point, we do it. We do it.
Yeah, we do. I mean, how was the transition from – this is what I've always wondered. So you did the Blaze, you did CNN. It was just straight politics. You were the conservative on the panel at CNN or whatever. What was that transition from – and I know you're really passionate about sports. Did you like it more going to ESPN and doing just sports the whole time? I know they made you mix in a couple politics here and there just to, I don't know why. They just probably told you to. But, I mean, was that transition beneficial for you?
Yes, and yes. I'm going to answer all of those. Okay. I loved it. Loved it. I loved my time at ESPN. As you point out, I've always been passionate about sports. No matter how many times he says it, Stephen A. Smith is not right when he says I don't know sports. And I'm almost always proven right over time. I say things that sound crazy because that whole sports world is beholden to groupthink, safe groupthink. And I say something different. Give me a little time. I predicted the Cardinals would beat the Niners. That doesn't mean I bat 1,000. I know there's a viral video going around about me saying Pat Mahomes wouldn't make it. But, hey, I was just repeating what the scouts were saying that day on first day.
That's true.
They were all saying it, that he lacked fundamentals. They were all saying
that's why he went to fucking Tech. That's why he went to Tech and not UT.
And that's why he didn't go number 1 overall in the draft. Everybody wants to be a genius now. You weren't before. Man, I loved it. And when I joined ESPN, by the way, coming from that background, there was a prove it period. Literally, man, I had to go into meetings and it was almost like they would quiz me on sports. I knew it. I got it cold. But, yeah, you just had to prove your bona fides, your bona fides, whatever. But when I was hired, it wasn't for political purposes. The guy that brought me in, who was a great dude named Rob Savinelli, he's no longer at ESPN. A lot of vision, Rob, about the kind of people to bring in and who are interesting on TV. He saw me, to your point, debating on CNN. He's like, that dude can debate. And then once he got to know me, he's like, he knows sports, which means that dude would be good on First Take. Yeah. And if he's not on First Take, we're going to find something good. And it's true. I can debate. I'm sorry for the lack of humility. I can debate. I listen and I can argue.
It's the lawyer, dude. It's the lawyer.
The political thing came up not because of me. It's because that's what happened. Colin Kaepernick kneels. Donald Trump says fire them all. And before you know it, the whole world is infused. It's indistinguishable. And ESPN, of course, dove in head first because they had two things. They were totally beholden to groupthink, and everybody thought the same way. Yeah. Or if they didn't, they were quiet and scared to say differently. And they have people. They still have some, but they had more then, who actually thought that was the purpose of their job and saw that as a higher calling than talking about whether or not the Cowboys could win with Dak Prescott. So they would use this as their opportunity to advance their agenda. I can honestly look everybody in the eye and say, that's not why I went to sports. Now, when it went that way and they needed somebody else to say something that was not stuck in the groupthink and wasn't afraid, I was available. And before you know it, I'm off and running on First Take. I have friends like Russillo and others who would debate this with me. Was it good for me or was it not? Well, it certainly catapulted me onto the radar. It also pigeonholed me, and this would be the negative, where it became my brand. And to this day, your buddy, I don't know Dan Patrick. If you ask Dan Patrick, what do you know of Will Cain? He'd be like, conservative, So it put me in this brand, and you could say, did that limit me? I don't know. But here's the thing, Shea. Then I got the Will Cain show on ESPN Radio, and people then who listened to that learned who I was.
Right.
And I love sports, and I did sports on the Will Cain show. If culture came in, I would take it on, and I'd be honest with people about my bias and my opinion. And I always had you on, either a caller or a guest, to tell me if you thought I was wrong. But my thing was, we're insulting the sports fan, because I am one, I know. And they didn't tune in to hear you talk about that college football is a plantation. They tuned in because they want to hear about Texas OU. Right. And so I was there to be a voice for the fan. And I loved it, and it will always be a wonderful moment. I left in 2020 because I acknowledged to myself that I was really passionate about the things that the country was discussing at a big level, and I wanted to be more directly in the fight, and I had an opportunity at Fox.
Yeah, that's the thing, is now you're at Fox and Friends on the weekend, obviously. That's what the number 1 rated weekend news show, period, fucking head and shoulders above. And I think it works well with your talents, obviously. But as far as the future goes, I mean, what's the contract with Fox like? Is that them saying, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that, we can choose what show you go on, when you go on? How does that work?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I joined Fox to do Fox and Friends Weekend. And a big reason, for what it's worth, was my co-host, Pete Hegseth. Yeah. Who I've been buddies with for over a decade. And
good dude.
You'll understand this. And he's a dude. You'll understand that. He's a dude. Pete and I are legitimate friends. By the way, I'm legitimate friends with Rachel Campos Duffy as well. She wasn't there when I first joined. So, TV is about chemistry, man. And anybody that's done it media, to be honest, at a real level. Like it's Dan's chemistry with his crew. It's Dan's chemistry with Keith Olbermann. It's Stephen A's chemistry with Skip or even with me. And I've never had better chemistry than being with those two on Fox and Friends Weekend. Anything else I'm on, they ask. Like, hey, Will, can you fill in for Laura Ingraham? Can you fill in for Jesse Waters? And I can say yes or no. And I do, depending on my schedule.
Really?
The other thing, though, yeah, I mean, if I want to and can, then I will. The Will Cain show is me. Like, I'll be real. I've pushed it. I created it. Because I love doing that on ESPN Radio. I wanted to do this at Fox. I wanted to create a digital show. It's now on radio. I wanted to have a format where I'm more, I'm always authentic, but a more full exposure to who I am.
Right.
Laugh. Right. I like to laugh at myself, man. I like to have a good time. I've got strong opinions. I want to hear pushback. Right. And so that's me driving that. But Fox is behind it, and I'm excited about the Will Cain show.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't know you could say no if Fox was like, do this shit. And you're like, listen, I'm busy. I didn't know that was part of the contract. That's sweet.
Well, anything that's not my job. I mean, my job is Fox and Friends,
Right.
So doing that other stuff. I mean, if I always said no, they'd be like, well,
yeah, right.
Will, what's the deal? But there are guys that always say no. But I do it if it fits.
That's cool. So I got the next segment. So every year we do a DGen of the Year award here at the Shea and Irving show. So, you'll find people in the news that come. Usually it's like a school administrator absconds with $100 million from the bond the town voted on, shit like that. Connor Stallions is up there for ours right now. Big fan of his. I don't know if you've got a DGen of the Year. It could be politics. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Politics or sports, but somebody that just like got away with something and got caught eventually. Like there's the one in Minnesota where the Somalians ran like a $450 million scam on the SNAP benefits. They're definitely in the bracket.
Really?
They're gonna compete. Yeah, they're up there. So just keep your eye out if you don't have any now, and message us. Let us know.
Well, this is gonna sound like, I'll tell you what I talked about today and what I'm thinking. Right. And I don't want it like everybody does it, but it's just true. And it pisses everyone off, and it pisses me off. And that is, man, my approach to media, like, here's the thing. I never have a problem with a guy like Stephen A. Because Stephen A. is telling you who he is, and he's telling you what he believes, okay?
Yeah.
I got no problem with that. I have a problem with people who tell me they're one thing and then are revealed to be something else. And it's not just hypocrisy, because, look, hypocrisy is a common and really honestly shallow sin. But to me, we're talking more now about fraud, like you're talking about, fraud.
Yeah.
And so, there's just a lot of examples of this, like where the media is fraudulent in who they are. My thing was always like, I don't pretend objectivity. I strive for objectivity, and I'm honest about my bias. And then you get to decide. Will's full of S, Will's right. So when I watch CBS host a vice presidential debate and, blatantly do it to one side against J.D. Vance, or I watch ABC do the same thing against Donald Trump, or I watch 60 Minutes edit their sit-down interview with Kamala Harris in a deceptive manner, it's fraud, man. It's fraud. Yeah. And that's degenerate. That's a degen to me.
Amen.
I guess, authenticity is my currency, Shea. That is. Like, if you and I met in person and we're hanging in the backyard at the barbecue, I hate small talk. I want to get to who you are. It doesn't mean we're going to like each other, but at least we're authentic. That's my currency. And if you're a fraud, I don't have much time for you.
Amen. I agree. I like getting right to the fucking root of the matter. Like, oh, yeah, everything's great, Jim. Yeah. Job went great today. Yeah, fucking blah, blah, blah. I had another meeting. Who gives a shit? How do you feel about the immigration crisis, you goddamn coward? That's where
But by the way, for me, Shea, it also doesn't have to be about that. It can be anything real. Like, hey, man, what are you doing with your hair? Like that's looking a little blow dried. Anything, because now it's real and now it's fun. And by who am I to say that? They blow dry my damn hair every weekend. But whatever,
The
I just
Dallas
want real.
fancy right there. Oh, shit. All right. So last thing before I let you go, who's good, who's not? This is NFL and college. You just tell me if they're good or not. NFL.
Okay.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Not.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm going to interrupt your game.
Yeah,
I'm going to
do
ask
it.
you one. Joe Burrow.
Good. Fuck that. Good. 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 God. Good.
At some point, I'm not being petty.
No, I
At
get
some
it. I know.
point, every other
I know.
quarterback is going to
I know.
have to be held to the same standard as Dak Prescott.
I know.
I am
I know.
honest about Dak.
All right.
But when are we going to be honest about Joe? I like Joe.
I do too.
I like Joe. But at some point, doesn't it have to have to be good?
So sidebar, Dak Prescott against the Steelers had the most Josh Allen game I've ever seen him have, where he dug himself into a fucking hole and then dug himself out of the hole and got a touchdown. The difference in the last fucking 40 seconds, the difference is the media's reaction to it. When Josh Allen does it, it's heroics. It's, Sports Center coverage. It's this. When Dak does it, we got Dan Orlovsky and the rest of the crew saying, unimpressive. So what? Who cares?
It's a great analogy,
crazy.
By the way.
The amount of hate he gets because of the star in his helmet. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Great analogy, by the way. It was a total Josh Allen game in that he was actually great for like 80% of the game.
Yeah.
And really bad on 3 plays, a fumble and 2 interceptions. And then when he had to at the end, he was great again. But it's like, how do you bring all that together? That's a Josh Allen game.
100%. And he hit Tolbert, like the fourth wide receiver that we have after all these injuries, and the tackle goes down and all this shit. Like, he gutted that out. He did. And I don't think the Steelers, that was my next one. Steelers, good or bad, with Justin Fields.
Bad, good defense, bad offense. I mean, and that good defense, I would say this year is not good enough to take them to the playoffs.
Not good enough to make up for, that offense. I totally agree.
Right.
Baltimore Ravens.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Lamar is another one similar to Chargers, LA Chargers.
Yeah. I'm tempted to say bad.
Oh.
But what we're watching Jim Harbaugh do is morph the Chargers into the opposite of what they have been. So we have been conditioned to think they're good when Justin Herbert's throwing for 300 and my fantasy team is lighting up,
but they
with
lose.
Quentin Johnson or whoever. And now they're not doing that offensively, but they're getting better defensively. And so I'm inclined to just see the offensive decline and say bad. What could end up happening, and Harbaugh would be the guy that could, who I should put some faith in doing this, is that by the end of the season, that defense is good and they're a legit second-round playoff team.
That's where I'm at. I trust Harbaugh so much. To me, they're good. It's going to figure itself out. All right, college football. This one's fun. University of Miami.
Okay, well, I have to pick good or bad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on the whole scale of it, good. They're gonna most likely win the ACC, although I think Clemson's gonna have something to say about that.
That's my next one.
And they, but I don't think they're a deep playoff run team. I think they've shown their vulnerabilities.
Totally.
Miami at this point.
Yeah,
by the way, I'm curious on this. I'm more passionate this year about college football than the NFL.
Same.
It kind of comes year in, year out. Obviously, the Horns are really good, but I'm paying more attention to the Miamis of the world than I am the Chargers. You know what I mean? A team that I don't care about this year. I'm in on the uninvested college football team more than the uninvested NFL team.
I am too, and I think it's because of the 12-team playoff. I want to see how Miami fares. I want to see how the hell they're doing because they're going to be in the playoffs. All right.
So the next one is what? Clemson?
Clemson, good or bad?
All right. So I don't know if you know this. So I don't indulge in sports bigamy. I'm a sports monogamist. You have your team and you don't have two teams. I did it once in 8th grade when the Cowboys were awful. I adopted the Cleveland Browns and Bernie Kosar, and I rooted them on just for them to get crushed by the Broncos every year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I have some allegiance to Clemson. My nephew plays offensive line for Clemson. I didn't care about Clemson before, but yeah, he's a sophomore. He's he's a Permian Panther. Panther, Odessa, Friday Night Lights. Yep. And he chose to go to Clemson. He could have gone anywhere because he loved Dabo. And from what I have been led to believe, it's a different program. All the other ones are factory-like to some extent, and it's a family. It's just different at Clemson with Dabo.
Listen, he's selling something good because he gets recruits. I mean,
yes.
The kids.
By the way, did you know there's 4 programs? There's 4 programs in FBS Division I that don't start a transfer. Might not even have one. Can you name? I saw it last weekend. There's 4 programs, no transfers.
I mean, it's got to be Clemson. Clemson's got to be one.
Or I wouldn't be asking. Yes, and I saw it during a Clemson game. So the other 3. I'm gonna give you a hint on the other 3. Right. It's a little bit of a trick question.
USMA, Navy, Army, Air Force.
That's it. It's the service academies. Yeah. So Clemson finds themselves in league with the service academies. No transfers.
That I believe.
So I think Clemson's real. I've watched every game, and they didn't look good against Georgia. I thought our Texas boy Cade Klubnik might be overrated and not going to pan out. I thought their offense was trouble. Man, game by game by game, Clemson has gotten better, and Klubnik looks good. And I don't think they're national title level. I don't think they're in that top 4 or 5, who's going to really compete for a national title, but they're in the top 12-team playoff. Miami needs to think about Clemson.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly where I'm at. I mean, I got Oregon and Tennessee on the next one.
Good and good.
Okay. I think Oregon's not good. I don't trust Oregon without Bo. I think they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. And that's it. I think Tennessee's a much more talented team.
Don't we have Oregon this weekend against Ohio State? I'm going to be interested in that game. Yeah. And I think Dylan Gabriel's a good college quarterback. And I want to see what the point spread is on that one, but I might take – I'm sure I'm getting points with the Ducks. If it's enough, I'd take Oregon.
It's just 3.5.
3.5. That's almost a scratch game, right? Like 3 is a home favorite.
They're at Autzen. So I mean, that's a home dog, baby.
It's in Oregon. They're getting 3.5. Okay, so that's a 6-point game. I think I'm going Oregon in that game. I haven't picked yet. I will this week. I think I'm going to go Oregon.
52.5 is the over-under. Right now, it's Oregon plus 3.5. I like the home dog like a motherfucker, but that could be a trap. That seems sneaky to me. That line, tricky. All right. Well, yeah. So,
are you worried? We'll wind this up. Hold on. Are you worried because you brought up Tennessee? Is Tennessee not as good as we thought, or is Arkansas better? And this is why I say, are you worried?
I think Arkansas is better
a lot, and Vandy and A&M, and all of a sudden this Texas cream cake schedule everybody talks about isn't so soft.
Mm-hmm. I think Arkansas is much better than we realized, better than I've even admitted, and I should have fucking admitted it when they played at Oklahoma State because they came out whooping ass, ended up losing that game, but because they just ran out of gas at the end. Arkansas has a quarterback. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I don't think Vandy's going to do what they did week in, week out, but all of a sudden now it's Oklahoma, Georgia, then Vanderbilt in a row for Texas. And I am looking at that A&M game out there, and I'm in College Station, and I don't know that undefeated is going to happen. Like, I think it's not going to be 2 losses. It might be 1, and I still think they're national title contenders, but asking for undefeated is a lot for Texas.
I agree with that, especially first year in the SEC and week in and week out, the grind of the SEC. Call it cupcake if you want. It obviously ain't. But that caliber, you don't get to play even though we had a lot of trouble at Texas Tech. You don't get Texas Tech, Baylor back to back like whoop de freaking do. Now you're talking Arkansas, Georgia, Vandy. That's a whole different world. That's just different.
Yeah. Vandy. Can't believe we're switching. Oh, man, we don't
Diego
get Tech
Pavia.
anymore. We have to play Vandy. Oh, it's so tough. Vanderbilt.
So crazy. Dude, I've been watching that guy. I've known about Pavia, and I say Pavia. I don't give a shit about Pavia. I've been knowing about Diego Pavia since junior college because he went to a school that I went
Really?
to for high school. So I've known about this kid for years. And then he went to New Mexico State, where the real Aggies live in Las Cruces.
Did you go to high school in Albuquerque?
Yeah, no, Roswell. He went to high school in Albuquerque. He went to Tornado, I believe. No, Volcano. He went to Volcano in Albuquerque, but then he went to JUCO in Roswell.
Okay. And you were in high school. No, you weren't in high school. You're old, yeah.
No, not then. But my junior, senior year, I went to a military school in Roswell, and it has a JUCO attached to it. And so I was getting calls about this kid when he showed up. They were like, "We got a little Johnny football down here. This kid's a fucking freak." And then he went to New Mexico State.
Did you go to NM?
Yeah.
Did you go to NMI?
Yeah, I went to NIMI.
I've got an NM. I went to Newton. I have a New Mexico military. What is it? Institute. Belt buckle. I got a big
shit
NMI belt buckle. I have a buddy that went there, and he got me a belt buckle. Yeah.
I got one of them. We saved them. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Roswell's a hell of a town. But yeah. So pretty much, I mean, Will, again, thanks for coming on the show, brother, and taking the time. It means a lot. We'll put this out there. Make sure you listen to the Will Cain Show. We got it on radio, podcast, video, and on the weekends, Fox and Friends. You catch them there. Will, thanks a lot,
awesome, man. Been a lot of fun. Thanks, Shea.
Appreciate it.